Hello and welcome back. My name is Peter Thor, a photographer from Iceland. And for the past few days, I have been testing this out. This is kind of odd because it doesn't even take photos. But as a photographer, I have found more and more demand from my clients to deliver professional video alongside the photography that I do. I'm shooting this right now on the A7S III, which of course is a remarkable camera in and of itself. And the good thing about this, again, the Fx6, is that they share sensors. And I thought it would be only logical to actually give its big brother a test drive. And that's what I did. So throughout the video, I will be showing you clips that I've shot during the past 4 or 5 days or so whilst testing the Fx6. And it's an interesting comparison, I have to say. It's like many of you had watched so many of the videos, and the scary factor was sort of, in my mind, that it was somehow supposed to be more complicated, harder to work because of the pro menus. And of course, with the photography background, I am used to the regular Sony menus, so to speak. And in that regard, the A7S III was a giant leap forward menu-wise. I have to say, it's so much easier to use the A7S III than the previous all the previous models, really. But I have to say, I didn't find it that confusing. The nice thing about working with a cinema body like the Fx6 is there are, of course, customizable buttons, and there's more of them than what we're used to with the A7S III or the smaller bodies like the mirrorless bodies. And there's pretty much a button for everything that you need to be regularly adjusting. And that is fantastic. The image quality I find really similar to the A7S III, if not identical when watching it. I'm sure you can do lab tests and measurements, and there's plenty of people that have done that to prove me wrong. But in the end of the day, it's our eyes that judge the image. And to my mind, I mean, they would be perfect as a set of A and B camera on any small production. Now, by far the biggest advantage to having the Fx6 over the A7S III, I would say, is the internal ND. And I thought I would like it, but I mean, it goes beyond that. It's a fantastic tool, and it's just like if you're coming from a mirrorless world and you're used to shooting with external NDs like a matte box or a variable ND of any sort, whatever the solution you're actually using, the internal ND is a blessing, and it's just so fantastic to use. Yeah, I thought I would like it, but I mean, it is so good. It's just, I can't believe it. It's so good. Now, of course, the Fx6 also offers other sort of more professional features, XLR inputs, albeit only on the handle. So if you strip it down and use it for gimbal work or anything like that, there's no audio inputs, which is kind of a bummer. But you could easily work around that with something like the solution from Tentacle Sync, or combination of a track key and a sync key would be perfect for this camera if you're using it in that regard on a gimbal or a lighter setup. Well, there is one hidden feature of the Fx6. No, not really. It's the opposite of hidden. It's its looks. It's just, it looks more impressive to show up with something like this on set. When you're comparing it to the smaller mirrorless cameras, at least. That's something that shouldn't be taken too lightly. You'll just be taken more seriously as a videographer and as a professional when you show up with something like this. Comes at I wouldn't say a hefty price, because when all is said and done with the A7S III, when you've bought a rig around it, you've bought an external, either a recorder or a monitor, which you'd probably need on the Fx6 as well. Not necessarily the recorder. I would say I would probably majority of occasions, I would shoot just the internal 10-bit on the FX6. I do so on the A7S III. I rarely go into recording. Well, on a professional job, I would record ProRes on the Ninja, but rarely have I used the RAW. So I don't think. I mean, it's a great thing to have. It's a great tool to have if you need it, but rarely do I find myself reaching for it. Yeah, so my point is that once you've rigged out, like fully rigged out an A7S III and compare it to the FX6, it's, you know, the price difference isn't that as great as I thought it would be. It's actually, they're getting quite close. Because I would say, at least for me, I mean, I could use the FX6 straight out of the box. Now, the thing that I was most excited to test between the two cameras, I have to say, was the autofocus. Now, the autofocus on the A7S III is a remarkable thing. It's just so very good. The touch tracking is so good. It's just spot on. And rarely do I manual focus with the A7S III. Now, I have to say the FX6, it's every bit as good, but it's clunky to use, as Phil Bloom said. And the one thing that I really liked about it is the face-only option, where you're not going to have focus shifts if you put your hand in front or something like that. And yeah, that's a nice feature to have, and I would love to have that in the A7S III as well. But the inability to touch focus and have the camera track like the A7S III does so well, I missed that. And you know, it's kind of silly that they don't have it. It's, the camera can track. It has a touchscreen, but it won't allow you to touch the screen to track something. It's just, Sony, it doesn't make sense. Please fix this. And it will make a world of difference to the FX6, which is so close to being, well, dare I say, a perfect cinema camera. Like, if I could snap a photo with it, that would be pretty good. No, not really. It looks silly. That would look like you know, what comes to mind is like taking a photo with an iPad. Don't do that. That's horrible. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. People that take photos with iPads. And one other thing that I want to mention, which I can't say that I love about the FX6, and that's how you adjust white balance on this thing, or, you know, set a custom white balance. I mean, it has a button right on the front. You press it, and you can use a gray card or a neutral card and just set your white balance. But the thing is, what is so convenient on the A7S III is you get a little square. You can move that square around, press set once it's on your gray card, and it works perfect every time. With this, however, you almost have to fill the entire screen for it to work, really. And you know, that's another thing that I would think that should be easily fixable in some sort of a firmware. Yeah, firmware update should fix that. I mean, it's those little kind of nagging little things that, you know, just drag it ever so slightly down from perfection down to being, well, a fantastic camera, but it's so close. It's so close to being perfect. I don't think I've ever said that about a camera. Well, the A7S III I did, yeah. But not on YouTube. I haven't done a video on A7S III on YouTube. Maybe I should. It's been done, hasn't it? Now, I should also say that this is not my personal copy of the FX6. It was lent to me by Sony Iceland, and for that I'm grateful, but it is one tempting addition to my kit, I have to say. And dare I say that will happen? Yeah, that will happen. It will happen. Ooh, one last thing that I almost forgot, and that has to do with the form factor of the camera, the FX6, and sort of the difference between the A7 III and the FX6, and also the FX9. Now, previous to releasing the FX6, Sony, of course, had the FX9, and that is more of a, I mean, it features more legacy features. It's more geared towards broadcast. Now, the FX6, I mean, it's a fantastic little camera. And the one thing I've been enjoying really with it is the handheld action, you know, right out of the box, like using the top handle and just like floating the camera around, which I do quite a bit with the A7 III. It just looks more organic and more sort of natural. I can't really put a finger on it, but it's, I mean, the sensor is, you know, not right back at the camera. It's sort of in the front, and it's, you know, it's probably got something to do with how, you know, it pivots around the sensor. That being said, of course, it doesn't feature an IBIS like the A7 III does, which can come in handy, but there's also incidents where I kind of just don't like the IBIS. It's sort of, you're moving the camera and the IBIS sort of has to catch up, and it does like a jerky move, and it's not very pleasing to my eye. Yeah, that in that regards, I have to give it to the FX6. And the reason why I mentioned the FX9 in this regards, and in this whole sort of comparison as well, has to be that, you know, this is not going to be your best option if you want to do shoulder work. It's not really geared towards it. You'd have to rig it out quite a bit to get it into that form. But if you know, like the handhold or shooting from the hip or something like that, it's fantastic. It's just fantastic. And it has to be said, I mean, it is light enough to put on a gimbal. Now, to end this one, I'm going to leave you with a few more examples from the FX6 that I shot around Reykjavik. Some of my girlfriend, some other stuff as well. Just anything I could shoot really for the past 4 or 5 days. I'd be really thankful if you liked this video, if you did like it, and if you subscribed. Helps me out a lot. Thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.